Greater St. Louis College Rules Meeting. John Jeffers, VP of Softball. I'll be your narrator for today's meeting. As you can tell, everybody's screen is muted. So if you have a question, use your chat and I will relay that to the speaker that is speaking at the time. We'll also have some time for questions at the end. So to get us started, I will introduce the president of the Greater St. Louis, Jim Fett.
Well, I wish we were at Harry Windelstat's umpire school in Florida. It'd be a lot warmer. But nevertheless, welcome to the first annual college rules meeting by Zoom. So congratulations, everybody that got chosen to do college ball for us this year. Hopefully this is going to be a good meeting tonight. And saying that, I want to switch over to Mr. Tom Swoboda. I guess you're going to lead this meeting, right, Tom? So, John, go ahead and unmute Tom.
Okay, looks like, I don't know, John, why are we getting someone's screensaver keep rolling through here? But at this point, I was going to turn it over to Gonzo, but I don't really even know if Gonzo is here yet. So wanted to see if he had a few words. If not, if Gonzo's not here, then we're going to go over to Brett. He's got a PowerPoint presentation. And then after that, I will go through the test questions. So, John, you can go ahead and if Gonzo's here, kick it over to him. If not, then kick it over to Brett.
All righty. Can you guys hear me? Thumbs up. Just make sure everybody can hear me. Okay. So we're going to get kicked off here. John, do you have the presentation or do you want me to share my screen? Do I have that ability?
I don't have it, so if you just want to share your screen.
It says I can't share right now what another participant is sharing.
Okay, Jim is sharing his screen. He's got to turn it off.
There
we go. Okay, does everybody see the PowerPoint there on the front?
Looks good now.
Okay, so let's get kicked off here. I'm assuming everybody should by now have a rule book. Have taken our rules quiz that Tom had sent out back at the beginning of December. So a lot of this stuff should be somewhat familiar at this point in time for us. So we'll kind of get going underway here. We're going to do a kind of what's on tap here. We've got a recap of last year's changes. Everybody should be pretty familiar with those. So we'll kind of get through those fairly quickly because it's going to be a 27 new changes going on for this coming year. So it's going to be a lot of information coming at you. Like Mr. Jeffers had said, anytime you guys have questions, use the chat box. I know we kind of want to banter back and forth, but let's use the chat box for questions only so we can get somebody to answer those. And then we'll also follow up after the meeting with answers to those questions as well. By now, like we mentioned, you guys should be in the rule book daily. If you're not in it daily, I'm going to highly suggest you get into it. I know Tom could probably attest this and some other veterans. I mean, just talking to other guys in the college game right now, it's a lot of information that's being thrown at this year. A lot of rules applications that we got to be on top of our game for. Questions will be entering the chat for you. Also, as we get into the season, you got to know that it's your responsibility and your requirement to fully understand the rule changes. It's not your partner. So if we can have two guys on that field that are experts at the rules, we'll have a pretty good day at the ballpark. If both guys don't understand the rules, it's going to be a pretty long day, and we're probably going to get a lot of phone calls, which we want to alleviate for sure. Every game that you go to, you need to make sure that you have your stopwatch. Your rule book should be with you, whether it's a digital copy or a hard copy. That should be in your vehicle with you. And then you also need to make sure you have your conference trip cards. and we'll kind of get into that if you're unfamiliar with it. And then you're also going to need the approved bat list as well, because at any point in time during the game, you can go ahead and ask that question out. If a coach or a player, manager has a question about that, you can go ahead and hit that in the butt right away. Let's kind of move forward here. Major rule changes. So the 2020 or 2019-2020 changes from last year. If you guys remember, there's now a strike awarded on a hit by pitch if the batter has intentional movement. As a reminder, if that is the third strike, that batter is out. Also know that no coach can argue that call. That's considered arguing balls and strikes. You need to put up the stop sign. Do not allow that coach to come down, argue balls and strikes, whether he leaned into it or not. Send him back to the box. If he continues, issue the official warning, and then eject. The intentional walk, remember now a head coach can now get your attention as the plate umpire. He can give you the signal of 4 that he wants to put the guy on base. He can now do that. They no longer have to throw the 4 pitches. And then you also have clear possession of the ball to block any base. That goes with the obstruction rule that came into place last year. Make sure that that player is not blocking the path. They've got to have clear possession of that ball before they can get in the path of the runner to apply a tag. And then you cannot feint a throw from third base from the pitching position. And then the defensive and offensive conferences. Remember, anytime that a player or coach meets together, that is a charged conference. That is the responsibility of both the field umpire and the plate umpire to make sure that they document that. It should be the responsibility of the home plate umpire to signify to both the visiting dugout and the home dugout that that was a charged conference and what number of conferences that is for that team. Base umpire, your head should be on a swivel. Make sure that there are no other conferences going on while your partner is writing that down. If there is, make sure you get your partner's attention. Make sure everybody in the ballpark knows how many conferences are going on. To recap on that, they get 6 defensive conferences. No more of those 6 can include, no more than 3 of those conferences can include a coach. And then if the game goes into extra innings, they receive the extra conference and they get a rollover any unused conferences as well. Offensive conferences, they get 3 offensive conferences a game. 1 extra offensive conference can be used in extra innings. And then this is why it's important that everybody have a stopwatch on them as well. I know some guys are using the Ref Smart Timer with the vibration control on the belt loop. That's going to be a requirement. Make sure you have it. Probably the biggest thing we've seen over the past couple of years is you walk on a field, you start running a stopwatch, and then we get the complaint, well, this is new to us. This hasn't happened in the past 6 games. We need to make sure that we're standard across the board in all applications that we're doing within our organization, the junior colleges that we service. So make sure everybody has a stopwatch with them. The 120-second time limit between innings. As soon as the pitcher is holding the ball and touching the rubber and the batter staying in the box ready to hit, the clock will start. It starts when all defensive players have started to leave their positions after the last out. That is going to be the base umpire's responsibility. As soon as that last out is captured, get your stopwatch out, start putting them on the clock. The time is going to stop once the umpire calls or signals play for the first pitch of the next half inning. During the first inning, both pitchers and a relief pitcher, when they enter the game, the clock will start as usual, but the pitcher is entitled to the 8 warm-ups. There is no penalty if that time expires. So when you start the game off in the first inning, they get the 8 warm-up pitches. It's probably best practice if you're the plate umpire while you're getting your reps in, getting your pitches down, to communicate to that catcher that, hey, you're going to be on the clock. My partner's got the clock out there. I'll let you know when you get down to 30 seconds. Put that onus back on the catcher so he can relay that back to his team once he gets back to the dugout. If the catcher is the third out or on base when the third out is made, the offensive team should have someone ready to warm up that pitcher. make sure you keep those guys moving. Make sure you're kind of peeking in the dugout, giving the speed up signal with your hand. Hey, you're on the clock. Let's get them going. You're going to get coaches that will try to stall on you. They're going to say, well, that was my catcher. Don't allow that to happen. Make sure they got a guy coming out of that dugout right away when that third out is made, and they're switching sides. They get out there, they get that catcher or the pitcher going so they don't get that time warning. Obviously, you want to make sure you enforce this rule and use common sense with it. While we don't want to necessarily pick any boogers with it, you do want to make sure you enforce it. If you can enforce it from the first inning and verbalize it to both catchers, you should be able to have a pretty clean day with the pitch clock. If you try to go ahead and pick up that end of the stick in the fourth or fifth inning and you haven't said anything about it all day, you're going to start hearing from both sides. So nip it in the butt right from the beginning that, hey, we're going to have you on the clock. My partner's got it. Make sure that those guys are moving in and out of game. It kind of goes back to a couple of years where they had the point of emphasis. I mean, that's a huge point of emphasis. Keep the game moving, keep the flow of the game moving, keep those players moving. Okay, do we have any questions in the chat on that we want to go over before we get going underneath the new 27 changes? Okay. All right, so here we go. Hopefully this isn't new information. It's new that came out this year, but if you've been in the rule book, you should already be somewhat versed in what the new rule changes are. So the first rule change that came out for this year was the foul tip. A foul tip is no longer must touch the catcher's hand or glove first before legally being caught. Make sure you guys understand what they're having asked under this. Make sure you can verbalize that back to a coach, because I can guarantee we're probably going to see this happen in the opening weekend or your first game's out. The foul tip is going to come up. The definition of the foul tip that came out this year. It's a batted ball that goes sharp and direct from the bat to the catcher that is legally caught. It is not a foul tip unless caught, and any foul tip that is caught is a strike, and the ball is in play. The definition of legally caught means in the catcher's glove or hand before the ball touches the ground. It is not going to be a legal catch if that ball lodges in his closing or other paraphernalia, or if it touches the umpire and is caught by the catcher on the rebound. If a foul tip first strikes any part of the catcher's body or equipment and it is caught by the hand or the glove against his body or the chest protector, before that ball touches the ground, that is going to be considered a strike. It's the third strike. The batter is going to be declared out at that point. Okay, the next definition or next rule that came out was the play or attempted play. Don't overlook this rule because there's a lot that can happen whether it's considered a play or an attempted play. So that's got to be a legitimate effort by the defensive player who has possession of the ball to retire a runner. There has to be an actual attempt to tag a runner with the new definition that they came out for the attempted play. The fielder or runner toward a base with the ball in an attempt to force a tag runner, actually throwing to another defensive player in an attempt to retire a runner. The fact that the runner is not out is no longer relevant. Okay, so that's going to be the new play or attempted play. A fake or a feint throw is not going to be deemed as a play. Next rule that they came out with was the re-entry after a concussion. Make sure you guys understand this. You're going to get some coaches that are going to try to outsmart you on this. Or if it's not a concussion, they're going to have an injured player and think that they can go ahead and use this underneath the concussion protocol, which is not going to be allowed. The concussion protocol now is a player who exhibits symptoms consistent with the concussion. They must be removed from that game and receive the appropriate medical attention. During that evaluation, he may be replaced by an eligible substitute who has not participated in the game. That's going to come down to your lineup card management. If the situation arises, make sure that that player that comes in is an eligible substitute and has not entered that game at that point. The injured player can return, or excuse me, they may not return until they are cleared by the appropriate medical personnel. They can re-enter only in their original lineup spot and only one time. Make sure that they don't try to pull the concussion protocol twice on the same player. Make sure when he does re-enter that game that you have that documented on your lineup card and he is going back into his original spot in that lineup. The temporary replacement player may again participate later in that game, but only in the same lineup spot. So make sure you also document who that replacement player was while that player was receiving the concussion protocol. You have his name, his number, where he was in that lineup. He can re-enter back into that lineup spot later in the game. If a temporary replacement player is substituted for, they no longer can re-enter that game. This is going to go down to the new fight rule. They're trying to clear up any possible altercations that can happen on the field. You're going to have a gauge of what's going on that field, the element of the game. If you don't think this is going to happen this year, you want to rethink that. You got to remember that these schools, they're getting their games knocked down significantly. That means majority of the games that they're playing are conference games. So basically from the first weekend out, it's conference games that are on the lines. Coaches are going to be competitive. Players are going to be excited to be out there. Make sure we've got good communication with our partners, good game management. So you're going to make sure that you want to institute the potential altercation rule. That's any team personnel other than the coaches who leave their team's dugout or bullpen to enter the field at the time of the potential altercation or fight, they will be ejected. Ejections will carry a 1-game suspension unless the individual participates in a physical confrontation or fight. Obviously, anytime we have any type of ejection, we need to make sure that we document that after the game. We contact our assigners, preferably by phone call, let them know, hey, we had an ejection, submit an ejection report to them as well. They'll forward that on to the conference and the schools, and they'll handle accordingly from there. Make sure if an altercation does look like it's going to be going underway, get to your dugouts, keep them in the dugouts. Obviously, you want to use some smarts with this. If a player takes one step out of the dugout, probably don't need to do anything about it. But if they come out jaw-jacking, running out of the dugout, start taking names and numbers, and those are all going to be ejected. Make sure everything is cleared up before you resume play. This is the old Randy Johnson rule that came out. The pitch that strikes a bird or an animal. If a batted or a thrown ball that remains in live ball territory accidentally hits a spectator, authorized on-field personnel, or a bird in flight or another animal, that ball is going to be considered live. So that ball will be live at that point. Do not kill that for action. Players, coaches are probably going to react that probably not continue with play. That is a live ball. Let play continue. The new rule is if a pitch ball strikes a bird in flight or another animal on the playing field, that pitch is now going to be nullified and play shall be restored with the previous count. So if it's an actual play, a batted or a thrown ball, the ball is going to remain live. If it's a pitched ball, it's now going to be basically a do-over. You're going to go back to the previous count. All right, the easy to understand designated hitter rule. If you guys have been in the rule book, it's about 5 or 6 pages long. This is something that we've got to make sure that we fully understand. The designated hitter rule, it can get a little tricky at times. The more you go through it, the more you understand it, the more you become the expert on it. It's going to be real hard to get out of a tough situation if you misapply the designated hitter rule or you do not have good lineup card management with it. So the designated hitter is now similar to the professional baseball rule on the DH rule. The only exception, the starting pitcher may still be listed as both the pitcher and the DH. This will now allow for the pitcher/DH to be substituted for one position and continue in another position later in the game. The DH that is named on the starting lineup, he has to come to bat at least one time unless the other opposing team changes pitchers. Where you're going to see this is if you're in the top of the first inning, pitcher gives up 10 runs, he's going to have to bat unless the opposing team changes pitchers. So make sure that you understand that. Make sure up on your lineup card, you know who's the DH, where his spot in that lineup is. If it comes to question, you're easily able to rectify it. A separate player may be used as the DH, but it's not required. The pitcher may become the pitcher/DH throughout the game. The DH must be listed on that lineup card. Make sure when you guys are exchanging lineups or receive the lineups at the plate meeting, take your time to understand what that lineup looks like. Make sure everybody's legally listed on there. All substitutions are on there, their names, their numbers. And if you need to ask, make sure you have clarification of who that designated hitter is. That'll help clear up a lot of any possible confusion that could happen later on in the game. Don't overlook that fact. The other part of the DH rule, if there's 10 players listed on that lineup card and there's no DH indicated, that can be corrected. It's highly important to check that at the plate meeting, as we mentioned. It can be corrected after the game has started, but if you have good lineup card communication and management from the get-go, you shouldn't have any issues with that. I'm going to highly suggest early in the season, really stress and emphasize to yourself to look over that lineup card before you start play on that day. Make sure everything is legally listed on there so you don't have the instance that comes up in the second inning and, hey, they didn't have a DH listed, but now they're playing with the DH. The DH can be pinch hit for or pinch ran for. If that happens, that player will assume that role, the DH role now. So if they are pinch hit or pinch ran for, that pinch hitter or pinch runner is now the DH. The DH is going to be terminated for the remainder of the game when these things happen. The DH enters the game on defense, except as the pitcher. The DH can become the pitcher and the DH. The defensive player can become the pitcher. The pitcher may pinch hit or pinch run for the DH only and become the pitcher DH. As you guys can see, this is going to get a little confusing with the verbiage, the different situations. Make sure we're really digging into the rule book leading up to the season to where we can fully comprehend the DH rule.
Hey, Brett, we have a comment. It says if only 9 are listed, the pitcher becomes the pitcher DH.
Yes, that is correct. If there is 9 batters listed, that pitcher is automatically considered the pitcher DH. Kind of resuming on here, the pitcher or the pitcher DH is locked into that specific spot in that batting order. So that cannot end up moving throughout as the game goes. That's going to be a locked position in the order. John, do we have any other questions over the DH rule?
Not at this time.
Okay. So that was about as clear as mud on the DH then. So like I said, guys, make sure we really understand it. It's a rule that was never easy to understand. It's getting a little bit more complicated because they're trying to get where they can have players and teams have more usage of that. It's going to be our responsibility to know that rule. So when you get stuck on it, you're going to have to be able to have a conversation with the coach of what they can and cannot do. We're going to have a lot of smart coaches that have been doing this for a long time. They're going to try talking you into doing things that they can't do. You're going to have to be able to verbalize that, reference the rule book, and be able to squash that conversation so you can resume on with play. The other rule that came out this year was the interference on a drop third strike. Okay, that changes and eliminates the word intentionally from the requirement for the interference on the batter runner. Now it is interference when after a third strike that is not caught by the catcher, the batter runner clearly hinders the catcher's attempt to field the ball. The batter runner is out, the ball is going to be dead, and all other base runners will return to the bases that they occupied at the time of the pitch. Okay, the key word here is clearly hinders is what you want to be going for. If a pitch ball deflects off a catcher or the umpire and it touches the batter runner, it is not interference unless, in the umpire's judgment, the batter runner clearly hinders the catcher's attempt to field the ball. Once again, that's going to be your judgment. That's going to blow up real quick on you. Know your situations. Know when breaking balls can be coming in the dirt, when that ball bounces off the catcher or possibly off your shin guard or your mask. Be able to locate that ball, look out in front of the dirt circle, see what could be happening on that drop third strike, if there's anything that clearly hinders them, or whether that's interference or not.
Hey, Brett, going back
Yes.
to the DH, another question has popped up. If a defensive player becomes the pitcher, that terminates the role of the DH?
Say that again.
If a defensive player becomes the pitcher, does that terminate the role of the DH?
Yes. That will terminate the role.
Does the coach have the option to keep the DH?
No, I don't believe he would. Tom, do you?
Hold on, Tom, how'd you?
We can get a clarification in the chat on that answer. Is there any other questions on the DH?
No.
Okay. We'll get a response back to him on that. I'll be honest, without looking at it right now, I'm not sure if they can do that or not.
No, they do not have the option. Once the position player becomes the new pitcher, the role of the designated hitter is terminated. So he can either go to the bench or assume another position on the field. So that role is out once he becomes once the position player becomes the pitcher.
Right. Okay. All right, moving along here with the along with the interference that's came out this year is now the thrown bat. This has added the words or foul to the current rule that is out there. So the new verbiage on the interference with the thrown bat is a batter is out when a whole bat is thrown into fair or foul territory, whether intentionally or not, and it interferes with a defensive player attempting to make that play. It is not interference if that bat breaks. You will get a few of these metal bats that will break, but that's not going to be interference. So the big thing you got to get out of this is it can now happen in fair or foul territory. An example of this would be when the catcher trips over a thrown bat while trying to catch a foul pop-up. You'll get a lot of these guys, they get a little pissed off that, they pop up a pitch. They kind of look back. We've all had those situations. They toss that bat back into the catcher. That's going to be immediate interference right then and there. Okay, forced play slide rule. We should be pretty well versed in this, but there is some new information that came out on it. The forced play slide rule obviously will not apply to a play on the batter runner at first base. The rule is going to apply to a runner in the vicinity of the base. Is now going to be the new verbiage is the vicinity of the base. It applies to any other force play. So the example on that is the runner trying to contact a fielder for the purpose of breaking up a double play. A runner could also be called out when there's interference intentionally with a throw, or if the runner has just been put out, the runner interferes with a play being made on another runner. The big key on the force play slide rule, obviously you got to meet your requirements as a base runner sliding. It's now within the vicinity of the base. The runner passing a base, that's going to be a runner that's considered to pass a base if he has both feet on the ground, beyond the back edge of the base, or beyond the edge of the base in the direction in which he is advancing. And we'll have a little kind of a visual here so that kind of clears it up a little bit. It's going to be the direction that the runner is advancing will determine the edges of the base when defining when a runner has passed a base. So if you look at the diagram that's on the screen right now, that's going to show your edges. This is going to come up when you have, that deep fly ball to center field runner on first base is taken off towards second. He rounds second. Next thing you know, the center fielder makes a diving catch. This is now clearing up and defining when a runner is passing a base or he is not past a base. So new verbiage here with the windup and the sets position for pitching. To be in the windup position, the pitcher now shall stand facing the batter. His pivot foot is going to be in contact with the pitching plate, and the other free foot is going to be on. It's going to be in front or behind or off to the side of the rubber. Is now going to be the definition of the windup position. The actual delivery of the pitch, the pitcher can only take a step backward or sidewards. He cannot go forward and one step forward with the free foot. So they can only go one step forward with that free foot. You're going to get some guys that are going to try to get that running start. They only get the one step. Any natural movement that begins with a pitch without interruption or alteration. During the windup position, they can pause during the delivery from a windup. No pause is going to be allowed if they're using the set position. Okay, so they can pause if they're in that windup. During the set, obviously they cannot pause. Here's a diagram that came out that's defining the windup position. It's defining where that free foot can be. It can be in front, behind, or off to the side of the pitcher's plate. Moving on to the set position, that's going to be indicating when the pitcher now stands facing the batter with his pivot foot in contact with and his other foot in front of the pitcher's plate, holding the ball in both hands in front of his body and coming to a complete stop. With runners on base, a pitcher is going to be presumed to be pitching from the set. And this is kind of where the new rule comes into effect this year. So he's going to be presumed pitching from the set. The position if the pitcher stands with their pivot foot in contact with and parallel to the pitcher's plate, and their other foot is going to be in front of that pitcher's plate, unless the pitcher notifies the umpire that he will be pitching from the windup position under such circumstances prior to the beginning of an at-bat. So this is going to be that instance now where he can say that he's going to be in the set position, but he can actually step off, get your attention, say this is now going to be his new pitching position from the windup. Upon notification, that umpire will call time, and he's going to announce that the use of the windup to the offensive team. At that time, the 20-second time limit will reset and restart when the ball is put back in play by the plate umpire. The new diagram on the set position, I mean, it's pretty cut and dry now. Should be. Okay, some penalties that came out. They got the one with the foreign substance. So that's basically, I mean, it's pretty easy, where the pitcher shall not have any other person or possess any foreign substance on them. That pitcher or any defensive player shall not apply any foreign substance or moisture to the ball, the pitching hand, or the fingers, or do anything to deface the baseball. The pitcher may use his bare hands to rub the baseball. The penalty is going to be an immediate ejection of the pitcher from the game for the foreign substance now. You can warn the pitcher if it's your judgment, such as spitting on the hand, the ball, or the glove, or rubbing the ball was not intended to alter the characteristics of the baseball. So if your judgment, you don't think he's purposely trying to do it, you can give him a warning. If he continues to do it, obviously you're going to follow up with the ejection that they have in place.
Brett, do you see the comment about the set position?
I do not. What is it?
Says he has to use that position for the entire at-bat once he's declared it.
Yes, he does. Good question. The catcher's position prior to the pitch. The catcher now must have at least 1 foot inside that catcher's box. I know some of these fields it's going to be hard to determine even if they have a catcher's box. Most of the turf fields now, they will have the catcher's box. But he's going to have 1 foot inside the catcher's box until the pitcher begins the pitching motion to deliver that pitch. This is going to replace that rule that required both feet of the catcher to be in that box until that ball left the pitcher's hand.
We had another question in there about
Yep.
sweat off of the arms to rub up the baseball. In that situation, I'm basically going to say, hey, throw that ball in here and replace it and tell them not to do it again.
Yeah, and to start the season, it's going to be 20 degrees. So if he's sweating, then he's working too hard. So, but yeah, that's right. Yeah. Be kind of smart about it. I mean, obviously, you can always give them a warning, toss the baseball out of play at that point. You will see this actually came up a few times that I've seen now. Is the technology, is the earpieces to where they can transmit the signals to the catcher. The current rule for it is video and communication equipment used to transmit any information between coaches and players, scouts, or other team personnel shall not be allowed for the intercollegiate competition. So they can have any technology to transmit any type of signals. It's going to have to be the old school way or their wristbands. Which brings us into the pitcher's wristband. They may wear the wristband with a signal card insert on their non-pitching wrist or forearm. Okay, so they can now wear that wristband on their glove hand is where they can wear it. It's got to be black or solid or dark color. If it's not covered by a flap, it's got to be on the inside of the wrist to reduce the distraction to the batter. When we're looking at wristbands, this is something we should be getting during the warm-up pitches. You know, if you're the base umpire or you're the plate umpire, make sure you're kind of going through your checklist of what this pitcher's doing. Are they legal? If they have the wristband, is it on the non-pitching hand? If it doesn't have a flap, then it's got to be on the inside of the wrist. Make sure you can handle that stuff from the get-go so it doesn't become an issue when they got a pitcher that's, you know, got a no-hitter going, and next thing you know, they're saying, oh, well, he's got an illegal wristband. Well, he's been doing it for 3 innings. So make sure you're going through that checklist. Take care of that business up front before the game gets started.
Is there any limitation to the size of the wristband?
I don't believe there's a limitation to the size. I didn't see anything in the rule book that said anything about the size of a wristband.
Just the color.
Yeah, just the color. That wristband, you'll have some guys will end up putting on their glove right at the base of their hand. That's not, or excuse me, the attachment is no longer allowed on the glove. That's got to be on the wrist. They are allowed now to take the signal from the dugout area while they're standing on the mound and not touching the rubber. They can check their wristband and then take the pitching position on the rubber. So anybody that does softball, it's almost like the softball. They can now get the signal from the dugout, then step on the rubber, and then go and take their pitching motion. Okay, 20-second action clock. There's a lot of information that goes along this, and this goes along with the pace of play. Obviously, we're not trying to pick out a lot of this, but we do want to make sure that we can enforce it to keep the game going. Obviously, if you have games that are going 3.5, 4 hours, you might want to start looking at the stopwatch. That's usually a pretty good indicator that a lot of stuff's starting to slide past the 20-second or the 120-second action clock as well. So when the ball is dead, the pitcher must engage the pitcher's rubber with possession of the ball before the ball can be put into play. Okay, so that pitcher's got to be on the rubber before we can even consider putting that ball back in play. So on that chart, which you guys might have already seen some other places, the first pitch of a half inning, or when there's time that's been called, or the ball becomes dead, such as a foul ball or a pickoff or a ball that's been out of play. When the pitcher engages the rubber with the possession of the ball and the catcher is in the catcher's box and the batter is in the batter's box, that's when the home plate umpire will signal play at that point in time. So you got to make sure that the pitcher is engaged on the rubber, he's got possession of that baseball, and the catcher is in the catcher's box. Let's see. Okay. When the ball is going to be remained alive is between batters or between pitches. The time limit begins when the pitcher has possession of the ball in the circle surrounding the rubber. So when the first pitch of any at bat, give the batter an opportunity to get to the plate and be in the box for the first pitch. The pitcher is going to have possession of the ball while he's in the circle, surrounding the pitcher's rubber, and the catcher's in the catcher's box, and the batter's in the batter's box. At that point in time, we're going to signal play. And then when it's also going to remain live between batters or between pitches. Okay, so after each pitch during an at-bat, following the first pitch, when the ball remains alive and the batter remains at bat, the pitcher has possession of the ball in the circle or surrounding the rubber, and the catcher's in the box. There's going to be no signal that's going to be required. You're going to start that time limit when the pitcher receives the ball and is on the mound. Remember, the person that's going to be in charge of our clock is going to be the base umpire. This is going to fall on you to make sure that they're keeping up with the action of the game. You're going to have to know when to operate that clock. Are we asking you to stare at your stopwatch the whole time? No. I'm going to suggest getting some type of timing device that you could probably have a vibration on it for, the 20 seconds. And as you near it, once you get to 15, you feel vibration. So that's registering to you that they're reaching pretty close to that 20-second time limit. Obviously, the last thing we want to do is take our eyes off the baseball and our nose is on a stopwatch. But we can see now that there's a lot more requirements for us to be on the field to maintain the pace of play. So the 20-second action clock, that timer shall stop under the following circumstances. So if the pitcher begins his windup motion or he begins the motion to come set, the pitcher makes a pickoff attempt. If there's runners on base, or the pitcher steps off the rubber to feint a pickoff attempt, in which case time shall reset and start again immediately. So if he steps off, makes a feint throw, okay, you're going to stop it and you're going to restart it. Okay, so you're going to reset that clock immediately. If the catcher leaves the catcher's box to give defensive signals or to confer with the pitcher, in which case the timer shall stop, it's going to reset at that point in time and start again after the catcher returns to the catcher's box. The umpire is going to call time, or it's also going to stop underneath the circumstance at any point in time when an umpire calls time for any legitimate reason. Before starting a wind-up motion or beginning the motion to come set, if a pitcher steps off the rubber when there are no runners or steps off without feinting or making a pickoff attempt with runners on base, the time limit or the clock does not stop unless the umpire grants the pitcher time for legitimate reason. So if they do that, you're going to keep the pace of play going. If the pitcher started the motion and then comes set, which stops the time limit, or has come to a set position, then steps off without feinting or making a pickoff attempt, there's when a violation has occurred. Okay. A lot of information was thrown out there. Do we have anything in the chat that we see right now?
Just a follow up to the wristband. Can the pitcher wear the play card on his belt buckle? I'm assuming that's like softball. It's not wearing it properly. It's got to be worn on the arm.
Correct. Yeah, that's got to be on the arm.
I believe someone said, yeah, this isn't a rodeo. So wear your equipment as it is intended to be worn, like John said.
It is correct. Be on the lookout because you're going to get teams that'll try that right away.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. A lot of information was thrown at you fellas tonight. Make sure you guys are in that rule book. It's a lot of information going on. I know a lot of guys are carrying their rule books with them daily. They're reading when they got some downtime, taking some time in the evening to read, to understand the rules. You got questions on it, reach out to us. We're going to have a lot of this stuff and a lot of the new rules that came out. A lot of this stuff's going to happen here in the first couple weekends when play gets underway. So make sure you guys are in the rule books. I know we've come out with a couple quizzes. I think we had about 50% of the people that actually took the quizzes. Guys, there's a lot of information out here. We've got to know it. We've got to know, too, that, hey, we're making pretty good money at the junior college level for what we're doing. So the expectation, I mean, it's got to be elevated quite a bit here because you're going to get teams that are going to be highly competitive from the get-go. They're going to test us on some of these new rules from the very beginning. And the excuse of, oh, well, it's the beginning of the season or that wasn't a rule last year, that's not going to be an excuse to a lot of these coaches and teams. Be the expert out there, know how to enforce the rules. If you need any clarifications throughout the year, we know stuff's going to come out. Reach out to Tom, reach out to myself. We'll be more than happy to help you guys walk you through it. Biggest thing is getting the rule book after each game. When the situation arises, go back to that rule, reference it, see if you did apply it right. I mean, we all make mistakes. We've all applied rules the wrong way, but make sure you get in that rule book. Especially after the game, there's going to be a lot of this stuff that happens. Discuss that with your partners, especially early in the season. Hey, do you think we're going too long on the action clock? In the action clock, you don't have to be hardcore about it. I mean, if you're the base umpire, you can correlate that to your first baseman. Hey, when you guys get in that dugout, tell your pitcher and catcher to pick it up. You guys are pushing 22, 25 seconds. Every now and then it's been 30 seconds. If we got any more, we're going to start dinging you on it. All you got to do is just kind of verbalize that to a first baseman or even a base coach. They'll go relay that information. The pace of play will start to pick up. Do we have any other questions at this point in time before Tom takes it over?
Tom, are you going to address that about the illegal bat list?
Yeah, that's going to come up here shortly on the test. So, Brad, if you're finished, I got a couple items to go over really quick.
Yep.
Bill Buchanan, I don't know if you want to jump in on this or not. Feel free if you do, but the COVID waiver Bill has set up for Arbiter. Basically, it's the high school waiver, and it's probably, as of right now, going to apply to the JUCOs. So on your Arbiter page, and you go to your profile, and then under information, scroll all the way down to the bottom of that page. And at the very bottom, there will be a COVID waiver agreement, basically absolving the association of liability. I talked to Blake down at Mineral area to see what the JUCOs are expecting as far as masking and testing and things of that nature. So they tested all the players in their programs right now. They will do game day monitoring. And Blake suggested that maybe we come down with, hey, we hand them a form that says, I don't have a fever. I'm not showing any symptoms, something of that nature. That might be something we do in the future. And looks like as of right now, we do not have to wear masks to umpire a JUCO game unless it's your personal preference to do so. That's fine. Keep it black, keep it plain, no statements out there. And it sounds like the coaches and players on the benches will be required to wear them, but we will not be policing that. So if they're in there and they're not wearing them, just and the opposing team says something, say, hey, take it to your conference. So that being said, if anybody has any questions on that, the waiver part for the association, it is in Arbiter under your profile, then click on information, scroll all the way down to the bottom of that screen. That's for your COVID waiver agreement. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. I'm not as fancy as Brett with the PowerPoint presentation, so please bear with me with some of these test results here. And let's get this rolling here.
One other thing, Tom, I did talk to Bletcher. Bletcher, for his JV games that are played at Lindenwood, he is going to follow the conference guidelines. However, we did talk about if a JUCO team comes out to play him at his place, what guidelines will they be following? The conference for him is set up so that they should all be following the home team's protocol. I have yet to talk to somebody from the JUCO conference because Tom's email came out this morning with what they were doing with the GLVC about having to be tested. But I will be talking to the athletic directors who's in charge of the JUCO baseball tomorrow and hopefully get something out to you soon.
Okay. So we'll just wait for that for more information from the athletic directors. So right now I've got the first question here of the test up. Basically, I just ran these into percentages and we'll just run through them here real quick. So some of them, everybody answered the same. So obviously we can roll through those fairly quickly. Okay. Jim also says that if anyone needs a COVID-19 mask, Jim has a few of the ones with the association logo on them. So get in touch with Jim if you want one of those. So here we go with the test. Which of the following statements are true about running lane interference in the last half distance from home to first base? The answer to that one was A and B. 90% of you guys got that right. So they have to remain in the lane the entire time. With that last step, they can come out of the lane as long as they were in the lane legally the entire time. So if they're not in the lane to start with, and then they're still out of the lane on that last step, and they get hit, or you deem that throw was messed with, interfered with because of that, then you can get an out for interference on that. So that's that one there. Next question, runners on first and third, one out, pitcher steps toward third, fakes a throw, and immediately turns and throws to first. That is a balk. Time is not called until play has ceased and the runner scores and R1 is out on that play. The runner, once he tries to advance past his base, he does so at his own risk. All right, runner on second, or one out, base hit the outfield. He's attempting to score. Catcher moves his foot into the pathway of the runner before possessing the ball, and we have a type 1 obstruction. Everybody got that one right, so that was a 100% there on that. Looks like Brett covered this one a little bit earlier. If no DH is listed on the lineup, to bat for the pitcher, there is no DH in the game. That is false. So once you make sure that lineup card is the way it should be, if it's not, you say, hey, coach, you don't have a DH listed, so therefore you have a pitcher DH. So we got 66% on that one. So here's the illegal bats one. So really, on some of these essay ones that I did, I really didn't expect right or wrong answer. But on this one, there is. Yes, you should have a list of illegal bats on your person. There is like a 7-page list that is on the NCAA website. And basically, if a coach comes up to you and says, hey, that bat's illegal, and you don't know because there are so many of them, you can't be expected to know all of them. If you take out that list from your pocket and say, go down the list and say, yes, you're right, that bat is illegal, I think that gives us a lot of credibility as umpires that we do that and have it ready to go. Your ruling's nice and easy, and you can show both coaches, hey, here it is right there. So any questions on that part, the illegal bat at all? Okay, so here's another one. Doubleheader, player in full uniform using the radar guns. Handle this through the head coach. You can see various responses here. Handle it through the head coach, especially if it's a nice day. Hey, coach, you got a guy back there in full uniform, get him in a gym short and T-shirts, help me out. If it's cold, throw on a sweatshirt, throw on a beanie hat, just something so they're not in uniform. And go, like I said, go through the head coach, just communicate with him. Hey, this is why. Just get it done for me. Thank you for your help. Okay, a lot of different answers on this one. The head coach leaves the dugout to argue a balk. How do you handle that? Well, no, it is correct that you cannot argue a balk. However, the coach is entitled to an explanation. So coach comes out, hey, what do you got? You explain it to him. Hey, I got him stepping toward me and throwing the first. And then if he starts to argue after that, you say, hey, coach, you asked me, I explained it. You're not allowed to argue it. So we need to end this conversation. You need to head back to the dugout for me. Hopefully just being respectful like that, he'll go back to the dugout. If it starts to escalate from there, obviously, you put up a stop sign, hey, that you can't argue it. And then after that, it's an ejection. All right, you got the home team pitcher warming up to start the game. You got 3 hitters out there getting loose on the on deck circle. I just walk over there and say, "Hey, fellas, the leadoff hitter and the on deck guy. That's all. That's all that can be out here. You really shouldn't have any problem with that. If somebody starts to give you some attitude, get the head coach involved. Say, hey, by rule, that's what it's supposed to be. Your guy started giving me some trouble about it. Handle that for me. Help me out." If I'm going too fast for you guys, someone please speak up. Just, some of these I think are fairly obvious. Here's a good one here. Batter is hit by pitch. In your judgment, the batter moved his arm into the path of the pitch intentionally. What is your call? That was a rule change in 2019. The pitch is a strike no matter what the location, as long as in your judgment, he did that intentionally. So we need to make sure that we get 100% on that as the season goes.
Hey, Tom, just a reminder to everybody, coaches cannot argue that either. Put up that stop sign. They cannot argue that.
Yep, that'll, I believe, come up in a question a little bit later. So we'll readdress that. Pitchers must have his shoulders facing the respective foul line when taking a sign using a set position. That is false. So you'll see a lot of these guys, they'll be facing straight forward, and that is fine. So pitching change required in after these following situations is all the above. Second trip in the same inning. Coach makes a trip to the mound. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading the responses there. So basically, it's not reading like I thought it should. Pitching change required. Basically, use your 6 trips. 3 trips by the coach. And I think, Brad, am I missing something here? I didn't copy that question out correctly.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
Yeah, the 6 trips and then the 3 by a coach. After that, the change is required for the pitcher.
Right.
Okay, backswing interference. Following a swing and miss by the batter always causes the ball to become dead immediately. That is false. You can have a backswing interference, and the catcher may still pop up and throw a guy out. I've actually seen that happen. So just call it, hey, that's interference, and then let it play out. And then after it's all said and done, sort it out what you got. If you got an out, then you're good to go. If not, then enforce the ruling. Here's some we had some different answers on here. Runners on first and third, no outs. Runner attempts to steal at second. First pitch to the batter. He falls forward, interferes with the catcher's throw. The throw to the second baseman leads to a direct and immediate tag on R1. So the correct answer there is C and D. Runner is out for interference, is ignored, ball remains alive and in play. But if there is a delay in R1 getting tagged, then you call time and the runners return and the penalty is enforced. First and second, batter fakes a bunt, leaves the batter's box. This is illegal. That is false. It's kind of like a swing. He's allowed to step out of the box for that. Okay, on a play at any base, the defensive player must clearly have possession of the throw before blocking the base with any part of the defensive player's body. That is true. That has changed in the last couple years from when he was in the act of receiving the throw. Now they have to clearly have possession of the ball first. Yep, a defensive team coach can be involved in 3 of the 6 conferences. That is true. Everyone got that right. So sounds like everyone is doing pretty good with the new trips rule. "20-second activity clock must be enforced, administered consistently throughout the game." 100%. So I was glad to see that on that one. Sliding directly into the base means the runner's entire body are required to stay in a straight line between the bases. That is also true. That rule has been around for quite a long time now. So runner on third with one out, pitcher from the set throws to the third baseman who's playing off the base well behind the runner, and the third baseman makes no attempt to move toward the runner in an attempt to put him out. The answer to that is B and C. It is a balk and he scores. However, if F5 had made a movement toward third to retire the runner, no balk would have been called. Okay, suicide squeeze, F1 bunts, fields the bunt, tosses it home where the runner is ruled safe. Now the catcher tries to retire the batter at first and hits him in the back while running outside the runner's lane. So due to an intervening play, R3 scores even though the batter runner is out. All right, R1, R2, nobody out, 3-2 count. Runners at first and second are still on the pitch. Pitches in the dirt. B3 swings and strikes out. The catcher blocks the pitch back toward the batter, who unintentionally deflects the ball. And 57% of you said the batter is out, and R1 and R2 return to first and second, which is the correct answer. Basically, what that one is nowadays, it just basically tried to take out the intent in there, so you don't have to rule on any kind of intent. If it happens, it's black and white. He's out. So basically, that's all I got for the test questions. The three things that you cannot argue, Brett was touching on earlier. You cannot argue balls and strikes. You cannot argue a balk, and you cannot argue a hit by pitch. So if you have the situation, especially where that batter throws his arm into the pitch, they are not allowed to come down and argue that. Anyone have any questions on any of this stuff from the test? Brett, you have anything else to add?
Just know it's going to be an ever-changing season, guys. Make sure, I'm sure you'll hear from Tom and Bill a lot. Make sure your arbiter is updated with your availability, because some of these COVID guidelines, I mean, if we get a guy that goes down with COVID, we're going to have to get him replaced quickly. So make sure availability is up to date on arbiter. If we send out some more quizzes, tests, make sure everybody takes the time to go through those. There's a lot of information that's going on this year. So the better we can handle our jobs on the field, I think it makes for a lot better relationship, a lot better fun when we're out there, especially during these junior college games.
Yep. So keep your eye out for those quizzes. Brett will be sending those out. We had Richie asked on here to repeat the COVID waiver information. So it looks like you go on your arbiter page, you go to profile, you go to information, scroll all the way down to the bottom of that page, and there will be a little checkbox for your COVID waiver agreement. I guess, John, if you want to open it up to everyone, if someone wants to ask a question that's not in chat. Adam, it is not a JUCO waiver. You are correct. It is just the high school waiver. So Bill wants all those signed by everybody, and that will be his process for this for now. Looks like John's got a few of y'all unmuted. If anybody has anything. Well, nobody has any questions. How about you, Jim? Any closing remarks?
Yeah, I would like to say one thing. It was brought to my attention today that there's probably nothing more embarrassing than losing a protest as an umpire. So saying that, it is extremely important to keep your nose in the rule book. You know, you can't retain everything at one time. It's a thick rule book, but something might stick the more you read. And again, there is nothing more embarrassing than to have a coach protest a book rule, and the umpires end up losing that protest. That's about all I got to say. It was a good meeting. Very well done, Brett, Tom, John
A lot of
Jeffers?
information, I know. So if we went through that a little bit quickly, just trying not to keep you guys too terribly long. Sounds like Richie, you have it recorded, YouTube, is that right?
I do have it recorded, yes.
So if anybody feels like they missed anything or they want to go back over something because we went too fast, Rich, you'll have it up on the YouTube page. You can look at it there.
Brett, will you be able to share that PowerPoint?
Yeah, there should be no issue with sharing that PowerPoint.
John, you got anything? Anyone? All right. I personally would like to thank everyone for taking the time out to do the test and to be here tonight just to go over all of this information. Just with all of these changes, it's just definitely going to be you get in a situation on the field, you're going to have to think for a second, okay, is this one of those? So, try to keep on top of things. So thanks, everyone. John, if you want to go ahead and end the meeting.
All right.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.